This is The Baseline, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA.
Welcome, everybody. You are tuned to The Baseline. Callie Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. It is getting hot and heavy, baby, in these NBA streets. Just some really great basketball being played over the last week or so. And definitely a nod to the upcoming Oscars. We have to make sure that when we do today's show, we are going to give our kudos, our awards. You know what I'm saying? Obviously, in any great situation, we would love these guys to get up there and give acceptance speeches. But on their behalf, the Baseline boys, we'll make sure we give these dudes their flowers. I cannot wait for us to have our Impress Me segment. It's been a while since we're doing that. They roll out the red carpet to my right-hand man, www.shawsports.net, Big Kahuna PNC, my man, Mr. Warren Shaw, repping out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. What's good, Mr. Shaw? I'm a little hesitant. I see a little blue and orange thing going on. Please tell me that this is something other than an advocacy for the New York Knicks' success.
It has nothing to do with the Knicks. Ironically, it's a soccer jersey I'm wearing today. So for those of us, if you're on the audio platform, Colombian soccer jersey. Some Colombian friends of mine had me go to a game one time and found this in the closet over the weekend. I was like, I'm gonna rock this, baby. Yeah. Ironically, I'm doing a fashion faux pas as I have on Mets shorts that I also are blue and orange. So they happen to match, but I have a soccer jersey with basketball shorts that are of a baseball team. So I'm all over the place.
Oh, you are a sports paella right now.
Yeah,
I'm loving it.
Let's go.
Put it all in the pot. I'm all about it. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to our people's Roots of Fight. You know what I'm saying? Of course, I got to rock the Brett the Hitman Hart. You know what I'm saying?
Oh.
Excellence of execution.
Yes,
As always, the Baseline boys, we are the excellence of execution in the basketball sports podcasting space. But as always, man, we appreciate everybody for hopping on board with us this week. Got a lot to get into. Some really great basketball has been played, as I mentioned earlier, over the last week. So we'll dig into a little bit of that, kind of give our thought and weight. But the focus for this show as well, too, is specifically on two teams who I don't know what has happened to them, man. Maybe they have tuned in to one of our favorite series that we like to always put an allegory in, put a little, metaphorical, you know what I'm saying, phrasing in there. These teams are Breaking Bad, man. Like in the beginning of this year, just simply struggling. Really couldn't even call what kind of season they were going to have. And all of a sudden, they have now projected themselves into the playoff picture. And we can actually have a legitimate conversation about what kind of team they could possibly be if everything maintains the status quo. So we'll be talking about those two teams later on in the show. As always, be sure to get at my man Shaw at Shaw Sports NBA or get at me at Game Face Lee, the show's Twitter handle at NBA Baseline, available on all the major platforms. You know where to look for us. If you see us on the YouTube channel and you catch the blue and white logo, we say hello to you. Of course, we're rocking with the 19 Media Group family. 19 Media Group, be running these content streets. So be sure to go to www.19mediagroup.com to not only check us, but also the family of great content creators that are out there in the space. When this episode drops and you love what you're listening to and, you kind of have the flavor of wanting to tune into some of our previous episodes, we encourage you to go to www.thebaselinenba.com. So coming up, Shaw and I will dig into a couple of news and notes, things that are happening in the NBA space, and then we'll dig into the teams that are breaking bad. But first, basketball season is heating up. I'm talking butane, baby, and PrizePicks is the best place to get real money action while watching your favorite sports. You can now win up to 1,000 times your money on PrizePicks. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win in order to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed when you use the promo code CLNS. PrizePicks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts and is available in more than 30 states, including California, Texas, Georgia, and Florida. PrizePicks is truly the best way to win real money with all the various opportunities to play and collect your winnings. Due to the enormous selection of players and stat types available, we can mix and match our playing strategies based on personal preferences. I might take Jason Tatum for more than 27 points and Drew Holiday for more than 2 steals to mix in some defense in my selections. Do you think Steph Curry will get more than 5 3-pointers next week? Giannis for more than 35 points? Cook up hot takes with your friends and win real money this basketball season when you and your crew run your game on PrizePicks. And for those of you who love a quick win, PrizePicks is the way to go. You can make your picks and submit your entry in less than 60 seconds. So what are you waiting for? Download the app today and use the code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Remember, PrizePicks is as simple as picking more or picking less. Again, the promo code is CLNS to get $50 after you play your first $5 lineup. Baseline is rocking with PrizePicks. You should too. PrizePicks, run your game. Coming up, Shaw and I get into it, discussing the stuff going on in the NBA. You don't want to miss it here on the Baseline. Callie, Warren Shaw, Baseline NBA podcast. Let's get right into it, Shaw. I feel like the other day I was almost having a boys to men moment. And I said to myself, what correlates to what's going on with the Philadelphia 76ers? What song can truly kind of really help summarize what the season for the Philadelphia Sixers is going to truly mean to not only its listeners, but to anybody who's been watching what's taking place in this regular season for them? And I thought about On Bended Knee. What more can be said? So now let's get right into it, Shaw. Embiid's done for the remainder of the season. This team has finished the month of February 1-10. I cannot believe I'm actually saying that, given the roster that this Philadelphia 76ers is comprised of. What do you make of this? And I think more importantly, because we're going to get into where the crux of this conversation can kind of go about what's taking place here with the Philadelphia 76ers. But what do you make of what utterly has been one of the most disappointing and disastrous seasons I think that we've seen over the last maybe 4 or 5 years with the Philadelphia 76ers, even with you encompassing the drama that has befallen them with certain players and certain moves that have been made? What do we make of this?
Well, I'm going to start from a place of care and concern, ironically, because I think it's very easy to kick the Sixers while they're down, and they've been down literally all season long. Embiid is not right. And with Embiid not being right, they're not really sure what's going on medically with the lower extremities. That's a very, very strange and odd and peculiar and scary proposition to be in if you're Embiid and if you're the Sixers. To just not know what's going on, why there's random swelling. Like, to me, when you talk about being on bended knee, they need to be on bended knee to the best medical professionals in the entire world. Like, who are they? Get those guys in here to get some real diagnosis of what's going on with Joel Embiid. At this point, it goes beyond wanting to poke fun at them for what is a disastrous season and what we all thought was going to be, or we hoped was going to be a great run for them with the addition of Paul George. But now I'm concerned. I'm scared, because now the terms medical retirement are being thrown around for your franchise superstar. And this is going to set the Sixers back years if Paul George, if Joel Embiid is not really able to kind of come back into this situation and get some sort of relief for what's going on with his legs and his knees.
Yeah. So I want to make sure that how you're wording this is me not saying that I'm trying to poke fun at what's going on.
Oh, no. I get it.
When I think of, on bended knee, I'm not just thinking about just a sad story. I'm thinking about really conceding to the fact that if you're the Philadelphia 76ers, you can no longer operate like this any longer, right? And when I say that by saying you can no longer operate in this space where you're letting the player dictate the terms of what the future is going to look like for you. You have to start making preparations with or without Embiid, okay? I think having Embiid, obviously, and as to your point, he has always been considered the cornerstone player, the franchise player. But I have said this, and again, I'm not trying to say this because I'm trying to kick a man while he's down or anything like that, but I have said this from the very beginning of the season, Shaw. Something is not right about the relationship between Joel Embiid and the Philadelphia 76ers. And I think the sooner that you begin to address where those differences, those fallouts are, is the sooner that you can come to the realization that whatever decisions that truly have to be made about the well-being, not just of Joel Embiid and who he is as to the franchise, but just his future in general, is the sooner that you can come to that realization about doing what's best for both sides. You know what I'm saying? I feel like all decisions are being forced decisions because everyone is trying to save face on what not has obviously worked out for everyone. In the middle of it, there's a lot of collateral damage. there's a wasted season of Paul George, right? Because he's not working with what he thought he was signing up for. It's a wasted season for Tyrese Maxey, who arguably was supposed to be the second piece to that cornerstone of the franchise, regardless of how many years you're getting from Paul George, right? You have Jared McCain, who unfortunately suffered an injury this year, and who knows what his potential might be to the makeup of this particular team. But Shaw, it all comes back to the whole concept of the team. And when these decisions are being made, is it for the betterment of the team, the organization, the culture, for everything? It just feels like every decision that has been made has been very jagged, with not taking into consideration all things that have to be encompassed about whether or not, hey, you should have shut Embiid down way sooner if you recognize that there's just things weren't feeling right, things weren't right. And this hasn't been the first time that we've seen this happen, Shaw. And I think that's the reason why it brought me to having this kind of conversation, because something about the culture in Philadelphia is off, right? And it's just exacerbated now with the success of what you've just seen with the Philadelphia Eagles winning the Super Bowl. I think people are beginning to say, as much as we want to pride ourselves in the idea that we have a great player in Joel Embiid, there's no semblance of togetherness, even with the struggles that this team is going through. Even Nick Nurse looks exasperated by what's going on. And that resonates more with what is happening from the top down to how things are being handled and how things are being presented. And I think that's going to create problems in the future for them moving forward, regardless of whether or not Joel Embiid may have to consider the idea of possibly walking away from the game of basketball.
It's scary. That's all I can say. I mean, it is absolutely scary. And, you feel for Joel, I think, in this situation. Again, he is the butt of many jokes. He makes himself the butt of some jokes with some of the things that he's done. But now we're in a situation, like I said, where we kind of have to shift gears and really examine this from a different lens. But to your other point, has the 76ers organizations made the right decisions in general? I mean, Embiid didn't do himself any favors by playing and looking dogged in the Olympics, for Team USA, and then coming back and then not being able to start the season. I'm sure that's a decision that he would most likely not do again. You know what I mean? If he had a chance to relive that, and the Sixers would probably have put their foot down knowing that, but I don't know that it would have stopped us from getting to the point that we're currently at. Then you take into the addition of, hey, well, Paul George wants to come to our organization. Embiid and Paul George are recruiting each other, if you will, or, on national TV during the finals, like all of those things. Like it was all good just a couple months ago, but it has all fallen to crap. And, I think, with Daryl Morey being the type of individual that he is, we're always looking to tinker and always trying to improve. I guess with the decisions that they had, or with the information that they had at the time, they made the best decisions that they thought was in the best interest of their team. I don't want to disparage that. It's like, oh, they should have known, they should have this. I think most of us having a chance to get Paul George for what they got Paul George for, which is basically nothing, would have made that move. And add that to what you thought was going to be a healthy Joel Embiid and a Tyrese Maxey who should be, in the all-star conversation for years to come. Then you got a great Jared McCain, but everything literally just went wrong. It all went left. And yes, there's some foresight, because there are going to be pundits out there. It's like, well, Paul George is always hurt. Embiid is always hurt or whatever. I get it. But if these are the cards you have, at what point do you like throw the hand in? Or do you say, let me try to add to it and see if I can get this? Because the addition of Paul George was meant to be able to save Embiid for parts of this season. The problem is Paul George hasn't even looked like himself either, which is not something that I guess they really thought was going to happen. I want to ask you one question, though, because you've been on this train for a while with, Embiid should be out of Philly. You don't feel like the relationship is right. But Embiid now, like today, is he the most untradeable contract in the NBA? 4 years left, at 58. The last year, I think, is a player option at like 67 for him. They just recently did the extension. MVP candidate or not, if he can't play, like he can't play, is he the most untradeable contract in the league right now?
I think what you just asked me leads right into where the last part of this kind of conversation is going, because now there's rumors about Philly aggressively looking at Bob Myers and trying to bring him into the fold. Bob Myers, if people are familiar with, outside of him, doing color commentary for, ESPN's, NBA primetime and everything, he's the architect for, the dynasty that is taking place with the Golden State Warriors, right? Obviously, he's going to probably tell you that it is a tradable contract if he believes it's necessary. I believe that it's an untradeable contract because until you actually get a full, I don't want to use the word full season because full season people think I'm saying he's got to play 82 games. No, when I say full season, I'm saying a season in which from the beginning to the end, minimizing, all of the stuff that you do with load management and stuff like that, you have a reasonably healthy Joel Embiid who can perform in levels and situations, and there isn't a worry of him having so many gaps of missed time. You need at least a year of that, Shaw. I'm sorry. That's just what it's come down to. And the problem is if you look at where other teams are right now in the NBA, nobody is going to trade for a Joel Embiid as a cornerstone player being built to do something that they're already starting to see from the young players that they've already drafted or the core players that they've already established. There are a lot of those players right now on various teams. So the pickings is kind of small. You're going to need someone like a Bob Myers to really sell the idea that if it's no longer going to work out in Philly, he's going to figure out a way to package something to at least give Philly something to look forward to, but also sell whoever the organization is on where Joel Embiid ultimately can fit for that organization. And I think that's going to be the toughest sell.
Let me cook up a wild scenario. This is not something that I think most basketball true fans, especially fans of Philadelphia, would hope for. But I agree with you 1,000% in terms of Embiid is going to have to show some semblance of prolonged health. And that's going to be indeterminate and it's going to be subjective to whatever team might be interested, right? But I think the best case scenario for the Sixers is he comes back, hopefully at the beginning part of next year, right? Maybe the Sixers are this middling team again for whatever reason, and they cannot intoxicate themselves with the idea and proponents of Embiid being the long-term guy there because he'll be, 31, I think, next year. So I'm proposing that, hey, if he can come back, play, 80% of the games, up until the trade deadline, the Sixers team is maybe a 5 or 6 seed. Maybe they move him then, you know what I mean? And get him while the getting's good. Because if they're somehow playing great basketball, they're a 2-3 seed, they're just going to be like, oh, well, now we got it, right? He's fixed. And they're going to get into this mode of like, well, no, we'll ride it out. I actually think as crazy and as backwards as that might sound, that might be the best case scenario for them is to play like average to below average basketball with a healthy Embiid and see if they can get off that contract next season.
Yeah. Look, I don't poo-poo that thought. It's actually a very, very much an intriguing thought. I think what also probably needs to happen, Shaw, is I think this is where you begin to really see, okay, what am I paying Nick Nurse? Okay. Because I think that he definitely is going to have to shift the way that he is going to need to coach this team. He's going to have to develop a system that is very backcourt oriented because his best players are backcourt swing players, right? That's what he's basically working with right now. Even if you have Joel Embiid back there, and I'm not saying Joel Embiid should not be a primary option, but I do think, though, you have to think a little bit differently in the dynamic of how effective do you want your team to be and consistent do you want to be? Do you want it to be on the dependency of having Joel Embiid on that basketball court? Of course, he should be an X factor, but I think it takes away from what you're potentially asking the upside that you're getting from the players that are on the court consistently for you, right? Like the Tyrese Maxey's, the Jared McCain's, those guys need they need to be prioritized. And you can clearly tell that Nick Nurse is at a loss. Unfortunately, he's playing with a stacked deck because most of the matchups that he has to deal with on a night in, night out basis afford him not to have any kind of matchup of the front court space. Even though he's getting contributions from Yabusele, he's not a long-term fix. As a matter of fact, he's actually playing out of his position more so than not. You're getting limited minutes. You can only get like a spot number of quality minutes from Drummond. So ultimately, I think they have to shift the narrative about what kind of productivity to core productivity, because you can even say that's what's happened, the evolution of the Cleveland Cavaliers. That's been the evolution of the Boston Celtics until you find that guy that fits within, that final piece. Because if you keep relying on the Joel Embiid effect, this is what becomes of it. Once he goes, you've got nothing. and the rest of the team all winds up suffering because of it, which is ironic to me, because I think that the question that you could have always asked had Joel Embiid been healthy is, does Joel Embiid truly make the rest of the team better? Or is the team solely dependent that they can only win unless he is on that basketball court? And the inconsistencies over the last couple of years has not given us the opportunity to even raise that kind of question, because we worry more about him just being on the court rather than him having the overall effect on the court that he's supposed to have.
Yeah, again, I'm just going to continue to operate from the concern spot, because Embiid to me is somebody, well, we're all human, and he's somebody who I think has been less than humanized by the virtue of his inability to stay healthy and be on the court.
Let me ask you this question. Oh, I'm sorry. Go finish your thought, Shaw.
I mean, I'll just finish it by saying, I know he's going through it mentally, and we talk about guys like Kawhi Leonard, who we may talk a little bit about later on in the show as well, too, who consistently have to come back and rehab themselves and get to this top peak, because we as media and we as fans of the game see the potential, see what they've even given us, at times. Kawhi specifically reached the mountaintop on multiple occasions, and Embiid has been an MVP. And we're just like, yo, we want to see our stars play, but something isn't right within the body. He and I think Kawhi to a lesser degree too haven't always been forthright with all of their, I want to say their passions for the game, but making the best decisions to make them available. But at the same time, this is a very, very stressful situation that they are now undergoing, and Embiid now specifically, especially if the term medical retirement is being thrown around. It does no favors for him, no favors for his mental, no favors for the Sixers, and no favors for the Sixers fans.
Okay, I want to ask you this question real quick, Shaw. If the Philadelphia 76ers are able to sway Bob Myers to be a part of the organization, do you think he is the key to their success, or do you think he is just another face to cover up a troubled culture in a historically enriched basketball city?
I think there's a lot of let's go out here and throw money at situations, get the best players, the best names, front office folks that we can think of. So I'm not going to, besmirch Bob Myers' overall genius. But what do the Sixers have left in terms of assets, in essence, to fast track their proverbial success? That's what it really boils down to, as much as, bringing in the individual with the air quote right mindset. I could be the smartest person in the world, but if I don't have the proverbial assets, in essence, to make plays or make trades or whatever the case may be, then, I'm just here. And so, I mean, I think if Bob Myers is interested, sure, it's something that you can, kick the tires on. But I don't think he's the silver bullet here that will save the Sixers in the seasons to come.
I would be very interested to see what happens, because I wonder if by bringing in a Bob Myers, he's there to salvage or save Embiid. Maybe the dynamic of the relationship that Embiid should have with the executives of the Philadelphia 76ers can make things better for how they should be approaching Embiid's future, not just as a 76er, but also the 76ers future with Embiid moving forward. Who knows? But we're just hoping that there is some level of resolution. And on that other side of that resolution, it means that there's the possibilities of Joel Embiid continuing to play the game of basketball. But again, I still question of whether or not that is with this same franchise and organization, for the betterment and the long term of his career, and equally the success for the Philadelphia 76ers and what they would expect and want to do with the stars that they do currently have on their roster moving forward. You're tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Coming up, we're going to do a little Impress Me. Got some stats and things happening over the last couple of weeks, man. Has me and Shaw in our bond field. So we are going to speak on what has impressed us over the week. So you don't want to miss out here on The Baseline. We are back. Cal Warren Shaw, Baseline NBA podcast. Time for us to do a little Impress Me. Some really quality basketball has been played, and whether it's by player or teams, it's been some really impressive stuff going on, especially now, Shaw, as we're getting around to that stretch run, final, package of games left to be played before we start, putting teams in and slotting them into a playoff position. Maybe that is what has upped the ante a little bit in some of the stuff that we've seen. So I ask you, Shaw, what has impressed you?
Yeah, well, one of the teams you put on there, It concerned me for them in terms of like they're doing too well considered their proverbial station. And I agree with you. The Portland Trailblazers have been sneakily been playing pretty good basketball, no matter who's been on the floor. DeAndre Ayton's been in and out of the lineup kind of all year. Then Klingon comes in. Then there's a scare with him, but he's been available. Shaedon Sharp, in and out of the lineup. Scoot Henderson in and out. Like it's just, but they're doing all right. And I just trying to figure out what that really means in the grand scheme of the Trailblazers, because peculiarly they did not make a move at the deadline, did not trade any of some of their veteran guys where could have potentially gotten some other assets. And now they are, I want to say building around, but they are building up, I guess, in some ways, some level of continuity with this team. Anthony Simons is the guy who a lot of people think is not long for the Trailblazers for the long term, but having a pretty good season as their leading scorer. So, hey, shout out to Chauncey Billups and this Portland Trailblazers team. The word plucky comes to mind. They are not an easy win. They do still have, one of the worst differentials, but for the most part, this is a decent basketball team and could be a little bit of a spoiler for certain teams in the Western Conference as we end near the season.
Yeah, to your point, Shaw, I give a lot of kudos to Chauncey Billups. He's actually coaching up this basketball team. You look at this roster again. This roster, I still struggle with the cohesiveness of how this roster has been comprised to go out there and compete with what has been, more so the more stable, experienced type team. And Billups has figured out a way to put together the right, combination of players at the right time to go out there and compete against whoever the competition is. Listen, wasn't it like it's been almost 2 years now, right? They made the play for Scoot Henderson. And what have we been talking about? We've been talking about Anthony Simons, Donovan Klingon, Shaedon Sharp. We've been talking about everyone but him, which obviously tells you that he's still a long ways away from him being able to shoulder that team or move that team and franchise to the future. And clearly Chauncey Billups ain't trying to wait around for him to find his level of greatness or whatever. And so again, that comes down to coaching. That comes down to quickly recognizing the kind of guys that are going out there and are doing what is necessary to put their team in the best position to win. He's figured out a way to do that for 2 months consecutively. The Portland Trailblazers of playing 2 consecutive months of winning basketball. Damn, man, impress me. Here's mine. Cleveland Cavaliers, Oklahoma City Thunder, Denver Nuggets. All right, the usual suspects as far as having a 10-plus win month, right? You want to know who the 4th team is? Funny, I didn't mention the Boston Celtics, right? Yeah. The LA Lakers. What? The LA Lakers have also amassed a 10-plus win month in February. Damn it, man. The Lakers impressed me, especially after this blockbuster of a deal with Luka Doncic. It feels like this team has dangerously become even more of a threat with him now on the roster defensively as much as what you're expecting from them. And they haven't even found their rhythm offensively. And yet they still figured out a way in the midst of that bigger trade, all the distraction, all of that stuff going on, had the gap, right, with the All-Star break, and still amassed a 10-plus win month. Damn it, man. Lakers are impressing me.
Yeah, defensively is where they've really turned it around. Obviously, the Luka stuff is, bizarre land and great for them for the short term and long term. But Dorian Finney-Smith finally starting to pay some dividends. Jared Vanderbilt finally back healthy, after what was seen almost like an Embiid-like run. Didn't know if and when he'd ever play again. I mean, he's making an impact on that. They're getting by with the Jackson Hayes, Alex Lynn combo situation at center for now, but they're doing a great job on the perimeter defensively. I believe Redick even came out and said how important Finney-Smith and even Gabe Vincent were to what they do on the perimeter defensively. So listen, Redick is not at this point really going to get a lot of consideration for Coach of the Year, and I wouldn't propose for that he should, but he's been able.
There should be some coffee side chat about it.
Sure. Because Laker exceptionalism and all, right? But I don't think he's a real candidate, but I will give him credit for turning the defense around, especially as it looks so porous in the middle part of the season and the beginning part now to where they are now. And they're a team that is going to be concerning for, I think, a lot of Western Conference opponents out there. I do not think this Laker team will be in the play-in. I think they'll be in the playoffs regardless. And that could be a scary proposition depending on the matchup they end up landing.
I think I think most people would rather see the Lakers one time than see them 3 times or possibly 4 times if they're the ones up in the up on them when it comes to the series. Um, to your point, and I just want to ask you this real quick before you move on to your next impressive thing that's going on right now in the NBA. When we're talking about JJ Redick, are you a believer in him as a head coach? Not we're just talking about coach of the year, but are you a believer in him that this is not just fugazi, that you legitimately see within him the attitude and the demeanor of someone that is clearly different than from what people had perceived when he first walked in and accepted that position to be the head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers?
No, I think he is who we thought he was going to be. I just didn't know how effective that strategy would able to play out. Would he be able to connect with players in a way that could produce to results on the court? So great for him so far, as we are 65-70% of the season through, that's coming to fruition. The next step is obviously seeing him and how he handles playoff pressure, playoff adjustments from the coaching lens, because that's something that forges the best of the best on all scenarios, on the sidelines and those who are in between the lines on the hardwood. So I'm rooting for JJ, not rooting against him, because I never want to see another man fail per se. But that is where he's really going to be, I think, judged here next, because he's I won't say passing, but he is more than a passable grade for the regular season test right now. Now it's getting into the playoffs and see what they do with it from there.
I'm going to be very interested to see, Shaw, you're hearing me first about this, me actually paying attention to the Lakers like this, because this is really Jabari's job. But what I want to see is how effective JJ is going to be with Luka Doncic. And when you have those signs of struggles, which I know that the Lakers are going to wind up going to, depending on their matchups in the playoffs, right? I want to see where is Luka going to cede to respecting where JJ's perspective is coming from, and how much of LeBron's influence will be had in reference to making sure that message resonates, right? Because look, Luka's already proven he's known how to get to that point on his, I want to say on his own. He obviously had a great coach with Jason Kidd, but he's obviously proven that he can do this, right? JJ has not proven this yet. This is his first opportunity to be able to do it. So I want to see how that all kind of comes together and where that level of respect truly should be when it comes to those moments. Are you challenging the player? The player is being challenged by the coach. And when you have the veteran, the greatness of a LeBron James, where he leans in and all of that to make sure that message is being heard, if the whole goal is for them to go on this championship run.
Yeah, I'll close it with this. I think I'll do you not necessarily one better, but I will try to match your scholarship there, if you will. What does Luka do when defenses attack him? Like, what does Redick do with Luka and that connection in terms of like, hey, well, right now you're not giving us the defensive effort. Like, he can't get hunted like he did in the NBA Finals, right? Or he can, but how will Redick respond to that, and how will Luka react to whatever Redick's response is to the adjustments that need to be made in that scenario? So I think the easy answer for Luka is obviously give your best effort, right? But you can only do so much. Your feet can only move so fast. And how can JJ Redick and team hide Luka where appropriate and allow him to be successful in a defensive setting? So that's what I'll be watching for, not only for the rest of the season, but I mean for the rest of the regular season, but obviously going into the playoffs, where I think the Lakers will be very, very dangerous.
Absolutely. All right, Shaw, hit me up with your next impress me.
Well, you have a lot of kind of guys on here, and I just wanted to, especially being a little bit of a prisoner of the moment, while we just talked extensively about the Philadelphia 76ers and how bad things have been, Quentin Grimes just had a miraculous game against the Golden State Warriors, beating them for only the second time in the Jimmy Butler era with the Warriors, although Jimmy Butler did not play. Grimes with 44 points, 6 boards, I think 6 of 8 from 3, 18 of 24 from the floor, and a miraculous career high performance. So shout out to a guy who a lot of people have been rooting for. He's kind of bounced around now a little bit, since the Knicks days. I think he's been on 2-3 teams now. Was it Detroit and Dallas? But now to find a home temporarily, I guess, in Philadelphia, well, at least he'll have an opportunity, especially for the remaining part of the season. 44 points, 6 boards with that level of proficiency and efficiency. Nothing to sneeze at. Shout out to you, QG.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I give you credits for that one. Listen, man, how about Kawhi Leonard? Kawhi Leonard logged in 38 minutes, Shaw. 38 minutes. Wow. I'm sorry.
You gotta love it. I do. I feel you on that.
Man. Like, listen, we want the glove, 3.0 back, the claw. We want the claw back. You know what I'm saying? And so I don't know whether or not that's going to mean something for the Los Angeles Clippers, when it comes to, playoff runs or whatever the case may be. But what I do know is that it's just so vitally important to have a great player like him, a dynasty killer like him, injected in the chat, right? And the only way to do that is you got to be able to see if he can handle that load. So to see him actually log in 38 minutes, to me, I just think is great. Do I think that that's going to be sustainable? Who knows? I'm just happy to actually see that for Kawhi Leonard. And clearly, if he believes that he can do that and can do that more times often than not now for the remainder of this regular season, that actually can bode well for the Los Angeles Clippers.
Yeah.
Final impress me, Shaw.
I'm gonna go with Donovan Mitchell, and just not necessarily the Cavs who are on another friggin' 9-game winning streak or whatever, like as they continue to just blaze through, the Eastern Conference, but he is a Celtics killer. The Celtics have no answer for Donovan Mitchell. He passed Michael Jordan for the most points per game against the Celtics in NBA history, now at like 30.8. I think Jordan was at 30.7, whatever the case would be. It doesn't matter. Passing Jordan is passing Jordan. The Celtics, literally, as good as their defense can be, with Drew Holiday and Derek White, and granted Holiday didn't play in the most recent matchup, but it doesn't matter. Donovan Mitchell cooks those guys regularly. Mm-hmm. He cooked them when he was in Utah and continues to cook them now that he's in Cleveland. The 41 points, the 5 of 12 from 3, and what was a finals preview by a lot of people's account. Now with DeAndre Hunter also in tow. But again, the way Mitchell has played, continues to play throughout the course of the season. When you need him to be old Donovan Mitchell and give you 40, 50, he can. But the fact that he's been very complimentary and subservient to some of the other guys, let other guys like Evan Mobley take more of a leadership role this year, I cannot say enough how much I am impressed with Donovan Mitchell's overall season and this most recent stretch the Cleveland Cavaliers are on.
Absolutely, Shaw. I couldn't agree with you more. And if there was ever a time for me to kind of question, the Celtics, listen, the Celtics in that game were blowing out the Cavaliers. So what is proven to me is that clearly the Celtics, when they have their full roster, are probably a better team than the Cleveland Cavaliers right now. But when you see how the Cavaliers methodically stalked down the Celtics and eventually wound up winning that basketball game to the tune of getting that 41-point performance, and then also the contributions from Mobley, all the contributions they were getting from all of their players, their role players, it tells me that the gap is closing very quickly. If you've got a great coach like Kenny Atkinson, who clearly had seen the blemishes and the holes in the Celtics, in that game in particular, and maybe it took the fourth and final game of their matchups for them to figure that part of it out. But I think that's exactly what you want going into the playoffs. Should you have to run against the Celtics, you actually know what you're going to need to do and who you need to get it out of in order for you to give yourself a chance to actually walk away from that series. And so the fact that that's what happened, Shaw, absolutely, total impressed me by Donovan Mitchell. I will say my last one, and I don't know if people have been paying attention to, obviously, the job that Nikola Jokic has been up to. I'm sure people are ready to give that MVP award to SGA, and very much well-deserved. But if people were paying attention against the matchup between the Denver Nuggets and the Milwaukee Bucks, I got to give my kudos to the big man balling. Jokic with the 32, 14, and 10, and Giannis with the 29, 19, and 7. This is what I love, man. Maybe I'm just too old school for my own good, but I love when the big men are out there putting on dominant performances, both positioning their teams to make that arguably one of the best games of the week. When you saw the Nuggets and the Bucks playing each other, both of these guys still at the peak of their powers, and clearly will have something to say about what's going to happen for that MVP picture. But if I felt like there was ever a finals matchup that I wouldn't be disappointed seeing, watching those two guys go at it in the regular season and letting that resonate and carry over for whatever those two teams are going to do for their individual conferences respectively, that's what I'm there for, man. Those performances by those two guys in their matchup a few nights ago, absolutely pristine. Jokic and Antetokounmpo impressed me.
Yeah, love it. I'd say Jokic is inching closer to getting back into that number one spot with SGA. Depending on where you read, Ashe was kind of running away with it, the straw polls and all of that, especially when he had, 350-point games in like a week and a half or something like that. So people were like, oh, like it's his. But Jokic is definitely coming back on strong. Not that he ever lost a step in any stretch of the imagination, but I love these two picks. Again, two of the best in our game going at it. Great numbers from them this week, and more to come, I'm sure.
Absolutely. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie, Warren, Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Coming up, we're going to do a little Breaking Bad. Two teams in the NBA who struggled at the beginning of the season, but are now on the rise. Does that mean trouble for the respective conference that they're in the playoff picture? You don't want to miss out here on The Baseline. We are back. Callie, Warren, Shaw, Baseline NBA podcast. Time now for us to be Breaking Bad. And there are two teams right now, Shaw, both in the Eastern Conference, both playing out of the same division, who have basically decided to say middle finger to all of those who doubt us. We are on the come up, respect us. And they have decided to turn things around. And it has resonated with the sound loudly that the Indiana Pacers and the Detroit Pistons are clearly on the come up. What does that mean? Like, when we're talking about both of these teams and the kind of stretch run that they've been on for the last 2 months, reinserting themselves into, quote unquote, the playoff play-in chat?
Well, I think for me, the conversation starts and stops more or less with Detroit, while Indiana, they were an Eastern Conference finalist last year. So most people predict them to be somewhere in this vicinity right now. But if you would have told me the Pistons, who set the regular season record for losses, consecutive losses, for any team sport, if you will, then only now to turn around and at this point you can almost say like they're a playoff team. They are 6 games above the play-in line right now and could fight for as high as the 4 seed with Milwaukee and the aforementioned Pistons. So the aforementioned Pacers. So to me, Detroit's story is better than Indiana's. JB Bickerstaff, while I've loved Kenny Atkinson, I love Mark Daigneault or whatever the case would be, but JB Bickerstaff also has a case for Coach of the Year when you're talking about miraculous improvements and where you thought a team would be to where they actually are. So for me, the Pistons turnaround being now top 8, in defense in the last 2 months, and top 6 in offense. The Detroit Pistons, dog. The Detroit Pistons are a top 10 team in offensive rating and defensive rating in the last 2 months. Wildly crazy things to be thinking about here. And while, I was down and continue to be a little bit down on the Pacers, I don't want to besmirch the fact that they have figured some things out. They still lack the defensive chops for me, and they don't have a great point differential when they do win. They've been playing about 500 ball in the last month of February, so not amazing stuff there. But their January was amazing when they were 10-1. So the Pacers are back in the thick of things, and again, they will be a tough out. But I'm just not as impressed with them as I am with the Detroit Pistons, and I'm not as scared of them as I have the Detroit Pistons, because I think they have size, they have the slight potential to even get Jaden Ivey back. I really like what JB Bickerstaff is doing with this Detroit team, brother.
What do you think is the turning point then for the Detroit Pistons, Shaw? I mean, because again, it looked very, very dicey, and I'm saying we had said as our predictions that the Detroit Pistons, are going to, I thought that they were going to definitely be a better basketball team. I think under the stewardship of JB Bickerstaff. I obviously did not expect this to be a winning-like type of basketball team. I thought there was probably another year or so to go. But the contributions that they're getting from Duren, obviously Cade Cunningham being healthy and literally is everything for those guys. I mean, just not from his ability to score, but his ability to elevate this team. And then, the injury to Jaden Ivey, I think really would have impacted what probably has already been an impressive enough run over the last few months for them. They probably have games that they could have won if they did have Ivy at their disposal. But what do you think the turning point truly had been for this team if you've been paying attention to what they've been doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's defensively and the fact that they have a efficient offense. Malik Beasley being able to have this level of proficiency coming off the bench. Yes, we all have always liked the idea and the concept of Malik Beasley, but it's like every other year where he's impactful. And this is a year where he seems to be really impactful coming off that bench. But again, Cunningham's ability to be healthy is obviously the biggest sticking point to that, allowing him to now be an all-star, which you hope will be a perennial one moving forward. Role definement, as I think we've talked a little bit about this as we've touched on the Pistons previously, but role definement, less Isaiah Stewart. Like, hey, we need you 15 to 17 minutes a night as opposed to 20 to 25, right? Tim Hardaway Jr., Tobias Harris, bringing in the veterans. All of those things now have given the Pistons the ability to make sense. And while I think looking at it on paper, you're like, all right, well, they still have too many parts and too many competing parts that will fight for the proverbial playing time. Bickerstaff has been able to figure it out. And then, hey, if I need to spike your minutes down because of injury or for whatever other reason, because of the matchup, that's been able to work without any real pushback, I think, from the rest of these guys. Tobias Harris is not some veteran guy. Is like, oh, well, I'm the OG in this. I need to get X amount of shots. He's like, yo, whatever you need me to do is what I will do. I'll try to play some defense, hit some open shots here and there, and rebound, 5-6 a game. I just think that all those things have made the Pistons this very formidable team that they have become this season.
I want to chime in on what you just said with regards to Tobias Harris, because you know how I've been about him as far as the kind of player that he has been over the years, right? I'm not saying that I have ever been truly disappointed. I've always believed in his potential to be really one of the more offensively gifted players at his size and the position that he played. But I also realize as well, too, that he has been so one-dimensional, right? And when it matters the most, that you need what he gives you offensively, he had never really kind of showed up, right? And is that, at the expense of, disappointing losses that the Philadelphia 76ers have suffered. And I think the Sixers kept him far longer than necessary for the kind of teams that they've had. That's neither here nor the point. What I was really alluding to, though, Shaw, is on a team like the Detroit Pistons and the kind of coach that JB Bickerstaff is and what he is asking of his veterans, by Tobias Harris buying into contributing on the other things that are outside of what his strengths are, has definitely bolstered the Detroit Pistons. And on the flip side of it, where I think the success has really been leaning in is while Tyrese Halliburton has been struggling all season long, the whole idea of the Pacers bringing in Pascal Siakam was we need the Pascal Siakam that is supposed to be a matchup nightmare for teams that they're going to be playing up against when it's playoff time. And you're starting to see him kind of taking over that aspect of it. Like, I want Halliburton to be the quality guard that he is. I don't see him as being that scoring guard that everyone was enamored with what the run that they had last year, especially in the playing, especially in the Emirates tournament, right? What I was more concerned about is Halliburton giving the rest of those guys their opportunity to eat and then being an impactful player, making key buckets down the stretch. But it all goes through Pascal Siakam. And you've seen that the turnaround for the Pacers is the way that Pascal Siakam has aggressively been attacking against the opposing defenses. And an outcome is him with a higher scoring output and having more of a presence that is giving relief for a guy like Halliburton. So I wanted to speak to those contrasts on where the turning points have been for both of these teams respectively. Now, to your point, does that translate that the Pacers you're going to be sold into the idea that that kind of way of play is going to work for them moving forward? I don't know. I do know that they cannot win only on the idea that, Pascal Siakam is going to be uber aggressive and everything like that. Like, Halliburton he's got to be consistent. He's got to be up there. He's got to score. He's arguably their second best scorer on the team from a matchup perspective. But if you're telling me the Detroit Pistons are as successful as they are, and they're not even getting the kind of quality output consistently from Tobias Harris, but he's contributing in those other things, we're talking about a completely different way to look at how the Detroit Pistons can attack you. Because everybody knows you're going to go after Cade Cunningham. But if you know that Cade Cunningham can help Tobias get off, can help Jaden Ivey get off, and those guys do go off, that's going to be a problem.
Yeah. There's a lot to unpack there for me. And, it sends me careening into another direction because in some ways it got me thinking about like, well, who would I rather have as the head of the snake for my organization? Would I rather have Tyrese Halliburton or would I rather have Cade Cunningham?
Ooh,
and I would say
that one for who you got.
That is, yeah, it is. It's very much an interesting who you got, especially, these Central Division teams, with point guards who do it in a very, very different way. But I'm concerned from the Indiana standpoint because yes, while they can get it done a little bit by more committee, and Siakam is right now the lead guy in terms of points per game, Halliburton is the one who drives everything there, especially with the 18 a game and the 8+ assists. I don't know. I I don't know if I trust Detroit more because I think that'd be a bridge too far, especially Detroit just getting here for the first time ever, and the Pacers being having a trip to the conference finals last year. All signs point to the Pacers being the better team in this situation. They have Benedict Mathurin, playing good basketball, in his third or fourth year in the league. So I do like this Pacers team. I do like the fact that they do it by committee in a way that I think is suitable to them. But what scares me is that I'm not sure about their defense, where I am a little bit more positive about Detroit's defense. You take a guy like Miles Turner, where he was like this great rim protector and defensive stopper, and he's not bad now, but he's not the same level that he was where he was competing for Defensive Player of the Year, I think perennially so. Whereas guys like Jalen Duren and the sum of the Detroit Pistons parts by the coaching of Bickerstaff, they all are playing good, gritty defense. So I don't know. I'm really, really excited about this Pistons team. Maybe because they're new and shiny. We didn't expect them. While I've always been a little bit dubious about how great I think the Pacers could ultimately be long term.
The sad part about this all, Shaw, is they don't get to play each other for the remainder of the regular season. I'm looking at the schedule right now, and I'm not seeing where the Pistons get to play up against the Pacers again. The Pistons actually have a pretty interesting schedule. Going into their final games, they got to play a home and a 1-1 with the Bucks. Who comes up with this nonsense? Like, I don't understand. This is so ridiculous. Anyway, I would have loved to, like, us having this conversation had me thinking, man, I would love to see them flex out a game to see the Pistons and the Pacers play, especially at the height of their powers, especially while they're in the midst of the run.
There is a not even slim, a real possibility that this could be your 4-5 matchup in the first round. That would be much to the Bucks' chagrin, and I'm sure this would be the NBA TV
special series. Their home away game that they have, their final two games, will actually determine, whether or not one is the 4 seed or one is possibly the 5 seed. Would that not be like hilarious?
Let me just say this: if the Pistons somehow play their way into a home court advantage, a 4 seed in the Eastern, give JB, at least tie him with Kenny Atkinson for Coach of the Year. If the Pistons get home court advantage in the first round of these playoffs, my God, you have to. It has to be done. I'm campaigning for JB right now.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying you ain't. Listen. Maybe I'm a little colorblind. You know what I'm saying? Maybe this has got me all of my feels about how I'm enjoying what I'm seeing from the Pistons. But that orange that you rocking, look a little red. Look a little red, bro. Look at little Motor City red there. I'm just saying this. Just
could be. But I'm definitely on the bandwagon. And if they're able to finish out the way that they're playing right now, and they capture home court advantage, man, like it'd be hard to deny JB that accolade. But again, it would even speak further to how good the Pistons are. And yeah, they haven't been here before, this group in this iteration. So we can't really expect a whole lot for them, assuming they don't fall off a cliff here, but do make the playoffs. That will be a great accomplishment for them, given where they were last season. And I'm excited for them, but can't sleep on the Pacers as well. And they will be a tough out no matter who they wind up against. And I think they are all counting on people like me to be counting them out again. And who knows, maybe they're in store for another miraculous run.
Yeah, man. Listen, I'm sure while Tyrese enjoys, his guest appearances on WWE and everything like that, I'm very much sure that he would like to see himself playing meaningful basketball well past WrestleMania and all of the kind of, main event wrestling things that are going on, because the Pacers in the conversation make it for good basketball talk. But again, it highlights the depth of that division, right? You have the Pacers, the Bucks, the Cavaliers, and now possibly the Detroit Pistons, 4 teams that arguably are going to have a say in where the outcome might actually be in the Eastern Conference. And it was only just a couple of years ago that we were trying to have that same conversation about the Atlantic Division as well, too. So I'm loving it. I'm all here for it. And I'm hoping that both of these teams are, verbally at the height of their powers, because I think that, to your point, there is a lot of basketball still left to be played, even though those two teams don't play each other, can still determine the outcome of how great that first round of NBA playoff basketball can potentially be for us and how we can keep our eyes focused on that.
Yes, sir. I'm rooting for the NBA TV playoff special if those teams were to meet for sure. But I think the Pistons would just be happy to be here and wouldn't care where they're televised one way or the other. So, let's go Detroit basketball. Let's go Indiana.
What was it that Kendrick said? The revolution will be televised. Right. Not
nationally though. Not nationally if it's the Pistons.
Right conference, wrong team. Right. Awesome show this week, Shaw. Great stuff. As always, man. Like I said, man, people gotta be paying attention, man. The pot percolating. The pot's percolating.
Yes, indeed. So let us know, who are some players or teams that have been impressing you down the stretch here of this NBA season, your thoughts on Embiid, potential medical retirement, the Sixers, what they should ultimately do. And then obviously your thoughts on the Pacers and the Pistons here, two of the central power teams in the NBA, really doing big things here, trying to put a scare into some of these Eastern Conference opponents.
Absolutely. Once again, we appreciate everybody for hopping on board with us this week for the Baseline. Cal Lee Warren Shaw, we appreciate you guys. We do. And we'll catch up with you next time.